We'll work on it.
Pretty good.
Thank you, Danny Elfman, for that arrangement. So,
Anthony, you're going to kick us off. Introduce this program to our audience.
Yeah, so we're back just days later. Tony, Connor, and Kirk ready to come back within days and kick this off again with Bigger Than Life, the Nicholas Ray film from 1956. So who wants to start?
706, baby.
Yep.
Lockdown edition.
I almost forgot.
Okay, first things first. The Last Jedi was great. The Rise of Skywalker sucked. Joker is woke, and it's better than The Godfather. That's all I want to say. You guys can weigh in on the movie if you like.
The Last Jedi is not canon. It's our shirts all say that right now.
I think The Rise of Skywalker is the best, not just Star Wars film, but the best science fiction film of the past 200 years. And that's really the only take I care to
You're dead, Tony. You're dead. I'm not going to kill you, but someone is. I'm just saying.
So that's Connor talking, and this is Kirk, just in case we didn't really introduce ourselves. In case this is your first rodeo, you haven't listened to the Peabody Award-winning podcast before, but Tony, I just wanted to say, as we were playing catch-up, I'm glad you made it back safely from the Ohio State House where you were part of that protest. I saw you with your M15 rifle on the steps, shouting at the people for wearing masks. But I'm glad
I just really want them to bring back Firefly. And that's really what I was talking about, a virus or something. I wasn't sure what that was, but really
simultaneous cinephile protest, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just really trying to get Serenity in the Criterion Collection. That was really what I was there for. And hopefully, if the statute passes, we'll and Mike DeWine signs the bill, it'll happen. So fingers crossed. Go ahead, Connor.
I can offer my thoughts if no one objects. This movie was very interesting. Big James Mason fan, lifelong fan. Love his acting, love his accent. Love everything about him. I would say this movie, though I've seen some, rumblings about how, it was Godard called it one of his favorite Hollywood films, or, one thing is that it was panned upon its release. I'm not sure exactly why or for what reasons, but I have to say, I don't really get where the kind of revival or kind of recovery of this film comes from, what they're seeing in it. To me, this struck me mostly as a kind of Reefer Madness style, kind of sensational melodrama about a new drug that was on the market that was very unrealistic, that was very way out there, but it didn't quite have the camp appeal. It was too anchored in reality to be good campy fun, like Reefer Madness. And there were some parts, and I'm sure we'll discuss them, where it just got way out of control. It got a little bit ridiculous. And I can talk about more aspects I would have changed or things I didn't like as much. But that was my kind of general take. I don't really get where the love for this movie comes from.
I think that for me, because I enjoyed it, I think that, there's definitely an element to it, but I think that this movie there's a lot of stuff in it. You know what I mean? It didn't just feel like some kind of after school special like PSA. I think that there's a lot in there about the family and patriarchy and mental health and kind of these underlying sort of structures and underlying sort of things that uphold our lives, right? The family unit and the father is the leader and all that, and sort of kind of continuously subverting that. And I thought what I particularly found affecting was the relationship between the husband and wife. I don't remember their names, but the relationship between the husband and wife, and sort of
right, is the protagonist and the
and
wife.
Sort of her delusion, her kind of attempts to kind of hold everything together even as the wheels are completely coming off. And I loved the big climactic fight where they turn on the TV and you hear like circus music.
Yeah, something like that.
To me, that was like a metaphor for the whole thing, where it's basically like you're turning on the TV, you're playing the nice family music when underneath there's nothing but just like horror and violence. And I think that transcends sort of kind of maybe the politics of the time, or the, I guess, the scare tactics about some new drug. Like, I responded to this movie, and there were things in it that I could relate to, even if like cortisone is not something I'm familiar with or that I'm, wary of, if that makes sense.
I am a cortisone user, by the way. That may affect my opinion.
Do I have to?
Of course you do. This was your idea.
You don't have to, Kirk. It's okay.
So, I was trying to think of an apt analogy. Have you heard, do either of you or any of you know what a coprolite is?
No.
Yes, I do.
It's fossilized dinosaur. Now, the reason scientists take interest in it is because it holds many clues as to the digestive and biochemical mechanisms of dinosaur functioning and physiology. But at the end of the day, it still is a piece of shit. Now, that's how I feel about this movie. It's dinosaur shit. It offers some interesting it offers some interesting perspectives into life and the, kind of the idyllic 1950s, the ideas of the subservient wife, the expectations placed upon children for greatness, and I don't know, class dynamics as well. But oh boy, Reefer Madness came to mind, like Connor said. I just didn't see what this movie was trying to convey to the audience. I didn't understand. It was as if there was the founder of a drug that was competing with cortisone decided to make a libelous campaign against its competitor, and this is the movie that came out. That's the only motive I could understand for why someone would make this movie. I didn't see enough of a redemption in terms of giving us insight into anything really. You got to give it credit. You got to put it in historical context and see that notions of mental health and mental illness obviously were extremely archaic, anachronistic and misguided and value laden. But I don't know how much credit I can offer. I just didn't find it that worthwhile of a watch. And I have to say, disappointingly, that this was Anthony's worst recommendation ever. That is the label I'm throwing down. You can put that in the thumbnail.
High bar, though.
Yeah, it is a high bar because he's usually right on it. But I didn't like this one, so that's just me, of course. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, as someone who's lived with Kirk, I feel like Kirk didn't like it because he acted a lot like Ed. Just raging around, screaming.
Pontificating ideas.
Always jeering about
you watch
religion.
Judge R films and write about them, Kirk. Tom was giving you a glass of milk. Anthony threw it on the ground.
I didn't find.
I just didn't want to do my homework, and Kirk came and just.
Tony, why did you find the wife character interesting? She was little more than like a robot. Like, she was just there to be kind of his French, you know, like there was no agency to her at all.
But
I mean,
that's
she
kind
was
of the
so
point, isn't it? I
deluded.
mean, I feel like this situation, even as sensationalized as it is an incredibly common situation, particularly not that long ago. If you were a woman in an abusive or like bad marriage, it's not a matter of just like leaving, like just it's not an option. You know, you have to make a best of this situation. And I find there's something incredibly poignant about her attempts to kind of maintain this family and to kind of just do what's best for her son, and just kind of that terror she lives in at all times. I thought that felt very genuine to me. And at the climax of the film, again, as over the top as it is, when he's threatening to kill their son and she's showing him the pictures of like them when he was a baby, that felt very real. Like that felt like real emotion and real human tragedy. So I found her, I mean, I don't know if she's interesting in the sense that she's like incredibly complex, but I think there is truth in her character, and I think there is like real pain in her character that I responded to.
Isn't there something too, just like extremely simplistically like tragic about Ed's character? Like, and the fact is, like, when he finally gets on that drug and he gets the energy and like the enthusiasm to finally do what he wants, like the very things that are like people want in the nuclear family and in the father especially, like recognizing the deficiencies about the nuclear family that he's able to finally do, the excess itself ends up being like the thing that undermines it and pokes holes at it. Like the fact is, the father who loves too much, the father who's like around to like do what he can't do otherwise because of work, because of sickness and everything, ends up actually also being the very thing that drives it apart because he can't rein himself in.
The thing that I would say is where I see where people are trying to think, well, it's a kind of a critique of this, 50s, nuclear family stuff. It's showing it breaking down in an interesting way. I think clearly whatever like transgression there is in this movie, it's meant to just be like the cortisone made him do it. Look how crazy he went. He's just basically just doing the opposite of everything he's supposed to do. It's reinscribing the 50s father role in the most boring, way. It's just like, what things does he do when he's on cortisone? Oh, he becomes a little bit too, sexy and flirty and having fun, and and too, he's transgressing the bounds a little bit. I mean, that's kind of considered, I think, a little bit good, a little bit fun, and a little bit dangerous, but not too bad. But then, like, what is the form? What is the kind of man that the cortisone is making him into? Either he's this complete, crazy disciplinarian, or, what I found most absurd was this whole like church part, which I think was just so obvious that he suddenly thinks he's so much better and wiser than the priests. And that's obviously just saying like, listen, this could happen to you if you do drugs. You might think you're better and smarter than priests, And then at the same time, he starts reading the Bible and he's like, God had a great idea, but he didn't go far enough by, ordering the son to be killed anyway. It was like, I don't know. I don't think it really amounted to a critique. It was more of just a bogeyman kind of negative version of the house husband, or of the man of the house figure.
I'm with Connor.
But I think
okay. I'm with Connor here because I feel like the cortisone it triangulated their relationship, and it allowed Ed to be let off the hook for any potential transgressions or the dynamics of the relationship. How, I guess to me, like you said, Connor, the cortisone made him do it. So he can't be at fault for any pre-existing structural mechanisms within their marriage. So that's, to me, I relate to that. Like, and I also think this was bad casting. I thought Barbara Rush was great, and I know that James Mason is like this prolific actor, but I just I felt like had they used someone different, it could have been a much more horrifying experience. I was never really that afraid of James Mason. Then again, I'm a man, bigger in stature, I understand that, but like trying to transpose myself onto a situation.
Kirk just said he could beat up James Mason.
Okay, James Mason, listen, it's on site of Kirk playground, 3:00. Be there.
You know what I mean?
First.
Like
No
you
cortisone.
can put yourself into someone's shoes and empathize with the fear they're feeling. And for me, geez, I don't know. There was nothing. It was so disconnected from his character at the beginning, from his general, just how he presents himself, his personality, his eccentricities, that it didn't instill fear in me. It felt so foreign. It felt like he had been abducted by aliens instead of like this might be something that was inside him. It did not feel like any of this was inside of him at the beginning of the movie. And if it were, it would have been far scarier to me. So, you know.
That's actually where I disagree. I feel like the thing is, I think the drug doesn't make him do what he's not supposed to do. It actually makes him do what he wants to do. And it actually reveals himself to like the furthest extent. And the fact that he encounters like the priest he has trouble with is another image of like what he sees when he's on that drug is another man not doing what he's supposed to do, which is complete that sort of role to the furthest extent possible. And so there's kind of like the tragic element of it is he has these strict ideas of what all these things are supposed to be and what all these things are supposed to be accomplished in that position. But the fact is like human experience and the human societal structure actually places limits that have problems, but also allow them to kind of be human in their positions, to have error, to like have questions about faith, religion, schooling, education and medicine and mental health. But the fact is the drug is actually preventing him from recognizing those faults.
And the movie is critiquing then, or it's placing the blame a little bit on those underlying 50s dad, that 50s dad ideology that he has, you're saying?
Yes, to some extent, but it's also assuming the fact is like that people are recognizing more wants because the 50s like patriarch doesn't like accomplish it. Like, for example, they want the father even more around, but the fact that the father is supposed to be the working dad has to be reconciled in there too. And so when he finally can be the dad who's around the kid and stuff, all of a sudden it's taken to like this dangerous extreme.
And I would say about the wife, my feeling was, I guess it's kind of beating a dead horse because Kirk already made this point, but I felt that she was so passive. When, for instance, right, we had the scene where he, you know, I think, again, this is where the movie verged into the, to me, the uncanny and the kind of laughable, was where James Mason suddenly bursts out at her and says, like, listen, I'm going to divorce you. Don't you understand? I don't know why I'm still with you, in front of the kid. And obviously, a part of me, this was the last part of the movie where I'm like, oh my God, like how could he say that? And I felt true, you know, impact. But then at the same time, it was going way too overboard. And then we just glance back at the wife and cut, next scene. We know like nothing's going to happen, right? She's still going to be there. And I guess that's maybe the point, but I think it should, you know, the movie at the beginning was good about showing how the wife is a partner in the relationship and how they're working together and trying to figure out how to raise their son. But at that point, it's just, she's just a passive recipient of his, you know, evil behavior. And we know she's going to do whatever she can to try to, you know, set him straight or find the good in him, right? Whereas, for instance, right, when he goes completely crazy, of course, suddenly Walter Matthau shows up and says, "Hey, pal," and you know, and just that solves the problem. You know, it's not the wife really doing anything. You know, it's not. I don't know. I think she still had a very passive role at the end. You know,
at the end and in the beginning, if you remember, she smashed the mirror. She was kind of suspicious of his behaviors. She was far more interesting in the first half to me. Mm-hmm. She was not a great foil to this unleashed, untethered psychosis, but not even really psychosis, like what somebody who doesn't know anything about psychosis in the 1950s would think resembles psychotic behavior. Really, like, oh, they must, think they're the son of God and they're gonna sacrifice
tragic
kids
hubris,
and they're gonna tend towards violence. And of course, because you know, everybody who has mental health issues is violent, and you know, but again, it was made in the 50s, so you obviously have to give that a lot of breathing room. But yeah, it's hard to say. I wonder if I had seen this movie, I would have liked to have seen this movie when it came out, and you know, what would I have thought? I don't know.
Well, it's impossible because, you know, you'd be a different person. You know, we'd all be different people then. But
no, that's what I'm
that would
saying.
be a real swinging 50s dad.
It's like, what was the reception? I would like to have, you know, perhaps that's my fault to not have seen like what the reception was like when it initially came out. Someone said it was panned.
That was my impression. Yes, I think it was. You know, it was kind of rehabilitated much later, or maybe a decade later or something like that. But sorry, when I said "come on," I wasn't saying "come on" to Kirk. I was sort of trying to back him up, and like, come on, that scene with the freaking like, you know, the whole Bible thing. He suddenly walks down the stairs creepily, reading the Bible. Oh, you know, and Abraham clave the wood and went, and I have to kill my son. You know, like, but God spared him. God was wrong. You know, that's like the most absurd thing.
Who knows what else he'll do? He has no respect for the laws of God and man. From his perspective, it's the only choice.
Sure, and the joke is supposed to be, well, he was the one who was just criticizing, you know, the church and being all arrogant, and now he thinks you know, like I said, I think that's what it was getting at. It was trying to make him out into this kind of, he's a hypocrite because he's irreligious, but he's putting himself in the place of religion. He's putting himself in the place of God, and he thinks he's smarter than God or whatever. You know, it's just a really silly, weird thing when, you know, maybe the whole skepticism about religion might have been kind of an interesting little bubbling up of, you know, actual anxieties of the time. I mean, it's totally undercut by that whole just absurd scene.
God was wrong. Yeah. I did think there was some like grim amusement in that scene. I did laugh a few times at his behavior and sort of like, because I think he does sell it pretty well. Like, I love when he's talking to his wife, because at first he's very serious and like he sounds like kind of like the tone is very like he's genuinely, and he says, maybe it's both our fault. Just like the idea of being that, like, it's her fault, but like maybe it's also his fault. And I thought that that was funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
But isn't that like
No,
in some ways
kind of funny,
too, though, like still yeah, but doesn't in some way, like, however humorous or whatever it comes off, isn't that still like the like psychotic behavior of like people who are like overwhelmingly controlling, the ability to take anything, whatever comes in front of them, and turn the blame from something that's hypocritical into something that's like, oh, all of a sudden it's both our faults and ideas. You can hear that all the time in like, you know, people who are in like abusive relationships and stuff like that.
But that's not psychosis. Psychosis, like drug-induced psychosis, the hallmark of that would be like disorganized thinking, delusional.
Right, fair enough.
You know, but I guess the biblical references, but it'd be far less cohesive, far more volatile in terms of behavioral reactions, in terms of ability to gauge others, and spatial awareness and orientation. It's like I said, you can't blame them, but I do see what you're saying. To me, that's more along the lines of a personality disorder. Like there are certain personality disorders that might understand or explain his behaviors towards the end, and whether that's kind of like latent and it's been dormant within him, and he it emerges, then I can kind of buy into that. But it just didn't strike me as it was all a little too convenient. But then again, it's a movie, so I can't really fault it too much.
I'll say this: I do agree with the point about kind of the general inconsistency and how, you know, it makes him act. You know what I mean? Like, if he were, to me, like the fact that his, you know, symptoms or the way he's acting isn't consistent with drug-induced psychosis, like that doesn't really factor into my analysis of the movie. However, I do think that his progression is sort of strange. Not strange in the sense that it's not clear, like how he's acting, early in the movie would not lead me to believe that he's going to act the way he does towards the end. I think they could have done a better job building up to that, or making just kind of a consistent, because I think by the end he has developed this kind of like, he has this very specific idea of like control and the world being how it's supposed to be, and he has to fill this role, and he has to do this thing for like his son, and that all kind of scans, but like that seems to just come out of nowhere in the second half of the movie. So I do think that is sort of problematic, narratively problematic.
I feel like we're so focused though on like the psychological ideas of it, but I also feel like it's like mainly actually sort of like a political byproduct of the way he's going through. The drug is just sort of the shorthand for it. Like the fact is, when he comes into like sort of this fascist like control, he has to maneuver things around like the three hallmarks of classic governmentality, which is like the education system, religion, the social structures, and they all kind of like play in a sort of structure or a sort of line of thought like that.
Yeah, and I think that scene at the schoolhouse at like the PTA meeting or whatever, where that's kind of where he kind of crystallizes.
Yeah,
he like reaches his final form, and at that point, I think his regression, as as crazy as it is at least like, I think it makes narrative sense. I think they show how he ends up, but
it follows from what came before, like when he was manic and having lots of fun and.
What about
shopping? Like how does that strict disciplinarian thing follow from what came?
No,
before?
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't. That's my issue. Yeah. I'm saying that at the schoolhouse scene, from then on, that's the progression that I think makes sense.
Okay.
But up to that point, there's no evidence of that or no foreshadowing.
Yeah. And that was a moment that was a moment I did kind of like, where I felt like I was with the movie, was when he says, listen, you're all going to be blown up anyway. You have to be strong. And that was just a slight moment of like the intrusion of reality, right? That like we're all going to be blown up. Like civilization's going to end,
That was quite a fun scene. The PTA scene was pretty funny, actually. I enjoyed it. And it is kind of cool to see, a character in this type of movie where it starts out so Leave It to Beaver, like, you know what I mean? Everything. I'm sure she wears her pearls while she vacuums, though they were lower middle class, I guess.
That sounds like a euphemism, Kirk.
Yeah. You know what? Don't go there.
Urban Dictionary entry.
But and then to see it kind of turn and to see it be so what is the word I want to use? Kind of, I'm drawing a blank on the specific word I want to use, but to see it kind of blaspheme, for lack of a better term, the image of the nuclear family in the 1950s was entertaining. It was thrilling at times, and it was fun. But I don't know if the other aspects of the movie resonated with me as much as they do with other people. And I think if they had, I would have enjoyed this movie more. So that's, I guess, my final understanding of the movie.
Yeah. I'll also give it, and you kind of alluded to it, Kirk, but I think this movie does have some chutzpah, some audacity, some like, they weren't afraid to really go for it, And I always respond to that, even if it's sometimes not the most prudent or wise decision. So
we're taking the final.
Shall we go?
So I think it's that time.
Yeah.
If I could go, I would say, like Anthony, as he explained his reading, like it tempted me, and I wish I could see the true kind of the political or even social or ideological elements in it. I guess my contention would be that ultimately, if those elements appear, it's all in order just to, again, to reinscribe or to reinforce all of those old ideas. I don't think it's really like taking them apart or making you question them. I understand why people like it, because they see it as deconstructing those things, but really tackling those things. I just don't see it, and so I would say it is not one of the 706 greatest movies of all time.
Okay, I'll say yes. I enjoyed it enough that I'll vote yes for it.
Yeah, I'm obviously I've kind of explicated my perspective enough, but yeah, I will say that this is a no for me. But I do like this is a pure, as I was saying in our introduction or in our pre-show meeting, this is an era of film that I'm largely unexposed to. So I like to see kind of the cinematic style, stylings and the various tropes. And I one positive, I love the score. I mean, the score was great. But more of this was good for me. I enjoyed it. So, but it's just a no for me.
Well, they say when your favorite thing's the score. Well, guess everyone will just have to see Noam Chomsky and I alone on the commentary track.
No, it's funny you say that, Anthony, because I think I forget who said it. It was some famous filmmaker, but he was interviewed about it, and he said, it was Leo DiCaprio. I think it was on the Mark Maron show, and he says, how do you know? He was asked, like, how do you know if you're in a bad movie? And it's like, you ask people after what they thought, and they said, oh, who did the music? The music was really
All right, well, I feel like Tony.
What?
But it was cool.
I feel like Tony.
Cool pick.
Yeah. Now, see, Anthony, it's not easy. It's not. It's not easy taking bold stances and dying on hills all the time.
That's true. At least I know I'm in the right of history, though, you know?
Everyone knows they're in the right of history. Everyone believes they are. That doesn't mean anything.
It's me, Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn,
Lincoln,
Abraham.
Abraham.
God is dead.
You mean the film God is Dead? Hey, don't spoil my pick, guys. Okay, we're going to suggest our choices now for the next film.
Sure,
oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Who wants to start?
I'm still mulling. I have 5. So
No one else? Okay, I'll start.
Connor.
Anthony, I'm not messing around here. I've had a lot of movies to watch over this interim of 2 years. So I've had a lot of time to think about this. So my movie is a shoe-in for you. This is Letter to Three Wives by Mankiewicz, 1948. Drama with some comic elements. The synopsis is 3 women, 3 wives receive a letter from one of their husbands. They don't know which. From someone, a woman, not from her husband, but from a woman who says that she ran off with one of their husbands. Okay, botched synopsis, botched plot summary, but you get the idea. It's off to a good start. So it's suspense, right? What's happened? Where has this gone? And this is just a wonderful kind of social drama from 1948 that feels fresh as daisies. It's no copper light. This is like fresh dinosaur meat right off the bone. And it's very relevant. And it's a lovely movie. And Anthony, I think you'd really love it.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'll go ahead. I'm reluctant to throw this out there, but I think I will. If we're to imagine the canon of 706 movies that represent, or that is what we think represents the best of film of all time, I think we've been kind of dancing on the periphery. We've been looking at, if we're to imagine a body, right, a body of 706 films, we've been looking at the fingernails, perhaps at the foreskin, at the pubic hair.
That's something I'd have to chime in there, but
well, I want us to go to the fucking carotid artery. And what I'm suggesting is for the fans, those diehards who are out there, we review Inception. Now, Tony's a little intrigued. Tony's thinking about it, but too bad he doesn't. Yeah. No, I think there's nothing I really need to say about it. Everybody's seen it, but we haven't talked about it in this forum, and we really haven't done. Have we done a Leo movie? Can I just gush
over
body
of
lies? Oh no, that doesn't
watch it on TNT.
A real 706 classic.
That certainly was a regret. But this, I think there's a lot of meat on the bones, a lot there for the taking. And I would be quite interested to hear everyone's takes on this modern classic by Mr. Christopher Nolan, of course, also starring my favorite lesbian Ellen Page, and Mr. What was he? Well, he was in 28 Days Later, but Peaky Blinders himself, Cillian Murphy, and Tom Hardy. I mean, it's out of this world.
Legend. No.
So, anyways, that's my suggestion.
See, Kirk, you almost switched me over to pick something else, but like the problem is, see, your passion almost inspired me to pick First Reformed. The problem is, Connor and I have discussed it quite a bit, and I know Anthony's seen it too. That gives me pause. So instead of that film, I'm going to pick The First Reformed of 2010 and Void by Gaspar Noé. That is my pick for next.
What?
Week. Enter the Void. Have you heard of that movie?
Oh, Enter the Void. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's seen it?
Have not seen it. It's on my list.
Have none of you seen it?
It's really funny because Shay and I were just talking about him like an hour ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
I won't say why.
That's a bad sign.
No, so is anyone familiar with like the premise or like what it is generally?
No.
I read the Netflix premise.
It's sort of like
I love those premises.
Guy is like a drug dealer, like gets killed and his soul escapes his body. And we have this kind of phantasmagoric psychedelic journey. It's extremely like psychedelic, extremely like wild and crazy, fairly long. It's like time bending, mind bending, but it's Gaspar Noé. So it's also very brutal, very unpleasant. It's sort of, I've never seen another movie really like it. And I don't even know if it's truly like a masterpiece or anything, but it's very interesting. Like I think we'd have a really good discussion about it, which is really why I'm pitching it more than it being like one of my favorite movies, but I think it will be really cool to watch.
All right, do we get we're allowed a rebuttal? Is that correct?
Kirk, take it away, man. I've waited too long for this.
Oh, well, so I'm not really. So let me just make sure I heard the descriptions accurately. Connor, you suggested the new David Koresh biopic, Letter to Three Wives. Now, I think the problem we run into if we were to choose that would be that some of those wives were underage. So we might get in trouble with the FCC. Now, Tony, I didn't really understand the appeal of a man who tongue darts his wife's asshole when he enters the void. If I want to watch a technical piece like that, I'll go on Pornhub. So I think it's irrelevant.
Did you just say Pornhub?
Pornhub. Yes, Pornhub. It's like Farmers Only, but for Iowa. It's it's pretty good. No, I think in Inception, it's for the fans, guys, and we got a lot to talk about with that one. But anyways, I'm resigned to my fate.
I think these are all great choices. I'd be happy to watch either of the other movies. I do love Inception. It's one of my favorite movies, and Connor's movie sounds very interesting. My only pitch for mine is I think it's just such a crazy, weird, audacious movie, and there would just be no shortage of things to discuss. Not that there'd be a shortage of things to discuss with the other ones, but I think mine would provoke kind of the best discussion, in my opinion.
And in mine, a wife goes to a letter and a husband, and Tony's gonna hate it, but you're gonna love it, Anthony.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
No, I'm not sure.
That was a bold argument, though. Connor had a great, salacious description of that film. Let's see. So I feel like Tony
about as cogent and lucid as the main character in the movie we just watched.
Well, Kirk, I feel like you watched the 2.5-hour edition of an 1.5-hour movie, so.
Well, it did because it kept buffering. It was horrible.
Yeah. Let's see. So I feel like Tony wrote about Inception every week until the Joker came out. I feel like
I took down the poster and put up a new one.
He's a veteran of Inception. Blog posts.
No, I'll go with Kirk. I'll let Kirk because I feel like he's been dying about this movie for about 8 years. Or at least since we know him. What is that, 4 years?
I think it's time. I think it's time
years.
to revisit Inception.
5 years, yeah.
This is this movie is very personal to me, and I
Tony's mad. He's leaving.
No, Tony's excited.
I'm seeing if I have it. I'm looking at my shelves.
We just watch it on your screen, Tony.
That probably would have been
a little bit easier.
In this movie than what you had, honestly.
Tony, can you FaceTime me so I can watch it on your CVT or whatever? What are those called? CRT.
It's a Twitch live stream.
Yeah. No, but thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. I instantly regret all the negative things I said about this movie that we just watched. You're a gentleman and a scholar. James Mason was the Gregory Peck of Gregory Peck's time, and so I'm excited, and be ready for some tough questions and some uncomfortable answers.
Lots of jet skis and
that's the name
motorcycles.
Of tagline.
What?
Is an uncomfortable answers. That's like our tagline.
We're just gonna spend 43 minutes discussing whether or not he's dreaming at the end. That's what's gonna happen, folks. Get ready for it. Buckle up.
I don't think it's ever been discussed before. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching as always.